Welcome to my podcast. Today, my guest is casting director extraordinaire Lisa Beach. Boy, what an amazing career this woman has had. She has worked repeatedly with some amazing filmmakers, Alexander Payne, Wes Craven, James Mangold. She cast Angelina Jolie in Girl Interrupted, Bradley Cooper in Wedding Crashers, and even Meghan Markle in Horrible Bosses. So she's got lots of fantastic stories, and we're about to hear them all. Let's do this. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here today, and I'm hoping to take a deep dive into your background and talk about how you find this amazing talent and hopefully give us some insight into what some of these amazing people are.
You know, it's been a long time. I've been doing this for a long time. I've gone gray as a result, but I totally still love my job. So everything's good.
So first of all, a casting director is not something I think people are born knowing that it's a job that exists. Like growing up, you watch movies, but you're not necessarily thinking about who is working behind the scenes. You don't grow up and say, oh, I want to be a casting director when you're 5 years old. So no, you beg to differ?
I'm gonna differ a little bit. It wasn't 5, it was like 13, but that's okay. I'll tell you the story. I think the question, you go with the question, I'll answer.
Okay. Well, the question is, did you always want to be a casting director?
From a very early age, I was always pretending to read, and I wanted to be Walter Cronkite. I remember like 5 when I hate to say it, I remember when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and my mother was crying hysterically, but Walter Cronkite, I remember him. And then I would take pieces of paper and pretend I was Walter Cronkite. So I kind of always knew that I wanted to be in some kind of it. I was always a ham bone from hell. My mother would, when the movie That's Entertainment came out, I was Ginger Rogers dancing around. I was Eleanor Powell dancing around the house. I was pretending so I wanted to be an actress, or I thought I wanted to be an actress. And then my mother and I went to see the movie Sleeper. I was probably 12 or 13 years old. She turned to me because it said casting by Lynn Stallmaster. And she turned to me in the theater as the credits were rolling. And it was like the first time you really ever saw a casting director credit. I mean, that's the first time I remember seeing a casting director credit. And she said, now, wouldn't that be a fun job? And so, I said, yeah, that would be amazing. That would be incredible. So, cut to 40 some years later, I was able to actually tell Lynn Stallmaster when Sarah Katzman, my business partner, and I won an Artios Award. Lynn was also being honored at the Artios, which are the Casting Society of America's version of the Oscars, because Artios means perfect fit. And so that's our job as casting directors, to find the perfect fit. But in any case, I remember receiving the award and then telling Lynn Stallmaster, in front of everybody at the Beverly Hilton, the story of how my mother turned to me and said, wouldn't that be a great job? And I was able to tell Lynn Stallmaster that story. Okay, I'll finish there, and then you can ask another question. I could go on. Believe me, I jabber. Yeah.
Okay, well, believe me, I will give you plenty of opportunity to jabber, because I love your jabbering. So what project would you consider your big break as a casting director?
I will tell you exactly what it was. I mean, I'll tell you actually my big break as a casting, to get into the casting business, because nobody thinks, you're absolutely right. Back in the day, nobody thought to themselves, I think I want to go to college so that I could be a casting director.
True. Yeah.
And after I got out of college, where my major was husband finding, but sadly I was unable to achieve that major. So then I had to get a job, and it's
an overrated major. Don't worry about it.
I've never discovered how good or bad it could be, but my English major is sufficing. It's totally whatever. So I got out of college and I went to, I got a job at a management consulting firm, and I just didn't want to work. I wanted to find a husband. And so a boarding school friend of mine called up one day in like 1984 and said, I haven't seen you in a while. You want to go to London? And I'm working on a movie here, because he had started getting into the movie business. And I said, as long as I don't have to sleep with you, I will. And so I didn't. But I ended up falling madly in love with him. So I did in the end. But in any case, then, we lived together for a couple of years, and he was doing a movie called Volunteers down in Mexico. And being with John Candy and Tom Hanks, where he met Rita Wilson. And so we were down in Oaxaca, Mexico, shooting the movie Volunteers. I was even an extra in the movie. And Nicholas Meyer, the director, noticed me being really bored, just doing nothing, because I didn't have a job. My boyfriend was the set, the guy who takes the stills. He was the
photographer.
set photographer, set publicist, you know, so that's what he was doing. And I was just kind of like drinking beer and eating tostadas all day. So he realized I was a little bored and a little overqualified for doing that. And so he hired me to be kind of a set PA. And I remember, you know, teaching the extras how to sing Puff the Magic Dragon and stuff like that. In any case, when we went back to Los Angeles in late 84, or I guess early 85, whatever it was, he asked me to be his assistant. And then as I was his assistant, a couple of things, you know, we were typing on a Corona Selectric and there was whiteout. There was all kinds of things that we just don't have anymore. And one day he was trying to cast his next movie, and it was called Fellow Traveler, and it was about the Spanish Civil War. And he had hired David Rubin as his casting director, who was working at that time as an associate casting director to Lynn Stallmaster's office. And so David, you know, David would come in for casting sessions a couple times a week, and I would say, "Oh, David, what about Blanche Baker? Oh, David, what about, you know?" And so when he went off on his own in 1986, he asked me to be his assistant. You know, at that point, I had left Nick, and I was working in Florida. I don't know what I was doing in Florida, but whatever. I was doing something in Florida. You know, it's whatever.
Up to no good as usual.
Probably still trying to find a husband at a boat trip. And so he called me up and he found me in Florida, and he said, "I would like you to be my assistant." And I said, "I know nothing about casting." And he said, "I'll teach you everything you need to know." And so on October 20th, 1986, I'm kind of an idiot savant with dates. October 20th, 1986, he said, you know, we started work, and we started a movie called Little Nikita with Sidney Poitier and River Phoenix. And we were on the old Columbia lot, which is now the Warner Brothers lot. And it was really cool. It was just so fun to be, you know, like I couldn't believe what I was doing. And I just loved it from the get-go. And I remember my first phone call, David Rubin Casting. And it was an agent that I had then became very dear friends with. His name is Richard Lewis. And Richard said, "Hello, love, is he there?" Because, you know, he didn't know who I was, but at the same time, he knew David Rubin. And I said, "David, there's a man named Richard Lewis who said, 'Hello, love, is he there?'" And so he goes, "Oh, Richard, he's a good guy." So in any case, I learned everything that I learned from David Rubin. And then we actually were traveling at that point. And he said, "Hey, let's go to New York." And we stayed at the Lowell, and we would have casting sessions at the Lowell. And, you know, this is about a year and a half in. And I remember Kevin Spacey came in, and David said, "Lisa, would you like to do the reading for this?" Because, you know, at that point, Kevin Spacey was at the time when he was auditioning for roles as opposed to, well, not being offered anymore, but whatever. Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I have to bring him up. But suffice to say, my first experience of reading with an actor, I consider myself a pretty good reader, because I know now I am a really good reader, but according to Kevin Spacey, I wasn't, because he stopped at the audition in the middle of it. And he said, hold on. No, stop. Who is this reader? And then David had to take over. So it was a little embarrassing. Oh. But in any case, I can assure you that I've gotten way better. I mean, in fact, I'm very good. Okay. But in any case, so and then Steve Tisch, we were doing Less Than Zero when we were at John Avnet and Steve Tisch's office. And this is where Craig Zisk, who's now a big producer, was John Avnet's assistant. And David and I had needed to hire an assistant one day. And so we found a girl named Sam. And about 2 months later, we needed to find her again. So we called Sam's house and said, "Hey, Sam, it's Lisa Beach, wondering if you could come back and temp for us for like a couple of weeks." The phone was picked up by her house sitter, Debbie Zane, because Debbie Zane and she were best friends. And Debbie Zane called back and said, "You know, Sam's out of town and I'm house sitting, but I'll do it." And we said, "Come on in." And so that's how Debbie Zane got her start.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was me, it was Zane over here. And one day we got a phone call for Craig Zisk, and somebody said, "Hello, is Mr. Six there, please?" So we called Zisk Six ever since. And those were the early days. And
okay, but wait, hold up. You have name dropped all these people and projects that I have to ask you a few questions about them. Like when you're talking about being on the set and Tom Hanks is meeting Rita Wilson and there's all this sort of stuff, like where was he at that point in his career? Was he still he was still a comedy actor who hadn't transitioned to
very much. It was still Bosom Buddies, and this was very much a comedy. And
so at that point, are you able to see that this guy is going to become the everyman, multiple Oscar winning, can do no wrong man in Hollywood? Or is that not something one can forecast that early?
You know, well, first of all, I wasn't on the set that often, but when I was on the set, you know, sure. I mean, he was always great and charming. And I have a couple of really great pictures of me and Tom, like at some, and he's got his hand on his chin and I've got my hand on my chin. We're both looking at the camera. We both look considerably younger. But then he also drew a picture of himself and said, "I love you madly, Tom," or, just fun stuff. I mean, it was just a great behind the scenes, and Sean Candy was so fantastic.
Yes. Yes.
And then I don't know, it's just like you could kind of see that Tom and Rita had something going, but it wasn't like official, even though it was kind of official because, well, there were other things in other people's personal lives in the United States that precluded any knowledge of anything that was happening in Mexico. So I hope I haven't ruined any, but they've been married for 35 years. So I'm totally fine with that.
Exactly. And Less Than Zero, what an iconic movie. I mean, how did it feel to be part of something like that?
I didn't know. I mean, I was still so young at this. I read the book and I was like, oh my God. And then we just had all these fabulous actors come in, and I remember, Jamie Gertz's audition. And I mean, I do remember it because just the way she just emoted so amazingly, and it just kind of captured this woman who's in such anguish over the fact that Clay is a, friggin' drug addict or, what it was such a unique experience for me. But as an assistant, I wasn't necessarily in the room the whole time. I mean, as an associate, yes. I got to be in casting situations where I was actually in the room. This was just me kind of being outside and, chatting with whoever came in. And I would love to I have a feeling that David, I mean, maybe he has, maybe he hasn't, I don't know, but at the Academy Library on La Cienega and Olympic that houses all the documentation, the documents at the Herrick Library, I have a feeling that, there are a lot of casting directors who have donated their, because in the old days we used workbooks. We had just big notebooks that were filled with, role of this and every person we'd seen, every casting session, every note, and it was a whole big notebook. So I would love to see David's, if he has donated them, I would love to see David's notes for Less Than Zero. And I'd say, oh my God, I remember when he came in. But
because it was Brat Pack time. And I'm sure you got every young Hollywood person that walked through those doors to audition for Less Than Zero.
Yes. But to ultimately answer the question that you asked about 5 minutes ago, it was a long intro, but Steve Tisch, saw me working with David. And so Steve Tisch said, I am doing a new television show called Dirty Dancing. And so he said, I would like you to cast it. And I was like, oh, wow, Steve, gosh, that's so great. I love Steve. He's fantastic. He's always been such a good guy. And so I worked on Dirty Dancing, and that was my first job as far as being a casting director was concerned. It's funny because my brother is in voiceovers, and he's a big voiceover guy, and I hear him all the time. But at the same time, one day an episode of Dirty Dancing aired, and it said casting by Lisa Beach. And then literally right after credits ended, it was a voiceover with John in the commercial. So I don't know, felt kind of good about that. And that's how I started. But then Steve Tisch asked me if I would cast his movie called Bad Influence. That was my real big break as far as getting into movies. And I guess I was 30 years old, maybe 31 or something like that. And I'd only been doing this for 3 years. And so I cast Bad Influence. And I remember by the time it came out, there was a screening of it. And my mother happened to be visiting in town. This had to have been, I guess, 1990. In any case, it was right before she died. And so we went to see the movie together, and she turned to me afterwards and she said, I can't believe you cast this movie. And it was just like my dream had come true.
Right. Doesn't that mean more than anything when your own parents that's worth more than any praise from anybody.
It was just so cool. It was just, I don't know. I just loved it. And I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget the moment she turned to me in the theater and said, wouldn't that be a great job? And then I was able to, she could see the credit on the screen. So
I think no matter what age you are, you always want to make your parents proud, like always till the end of time. Even in their passing, you still want to make them proud. Like you're like up there, like, I'm still trying to make you proud.
Yeah. I am still. But I know that I'm not, I guess, because of the lag time between, production ending and then I got School Ties because was.
Yes. I want to talk about that because that is, I think, encapsulated a lot of my youth was that movie. And Brendan Fraser really took off after that. And then, of course, he had his own storyline that he had to see, the ups and the downs, and culminating in the Oscar win for The Whale this past year. But when you cast him, what were you looking for? How did you create such an ensemble of actors and have him as the anchor?
We had a ball. I mean, I had a ball casting that movie. I remember going in for my, casting directors kind of have to audition too. They need to go and meet the director and the producer, and they need to, establish a rapport so that they will know that we are all on the same page as far as taste and creativity. And I don't remember how I actually got the opportunity to impress. It was Stanley Jaffe who was directing, and Sherry Lansing, so Jaffe Lansing at Paramount, and walking in and meeting the iconic Sherry Lansing, and Stanley Jaffe turned out to be just a fantastic guy. Loved him to death. And I remember walking into the bathroom before I took my audition, and I just said, "You can do it, these people." And I just had these, there's something about it that's made me realize that I really love being a casting director, is because I just get this sense, I think they'd be perfect. I think they'd be perfect.
But also you knew that world because you went to boarding school. You had a prep school education, and this was set in a prep school, right? So there was something that must have helped you or been in your favor in some way.
Totally. I mean, I can't begin to tell you. I could say, oh yeah, that guy was this guy in my class. I was the girl. That was, that guy was this guy in the class. That was this guy in the class. I mean, and I knew, and I told them that. I said, I went to a school called Middlesex, and I said, by the way, where are you shooting this movie? And they said, well, we're looking around. And I said, you really need to look at Middlesex because it is the most idyllic campus. Mm-hmm. So in any case, they ended up going to Middlesex. But I remember when I walked into that audition with Stanley and Sherry, I said, I've just seen this kid, Matt Damon, who just did a TV movie of the week with Brian Dennehy. And I forget what it's called, Favorite Son or something, whatever it is. I said, he has to come in. And I remember seeing Brendan Fraser, but, in that initial, pass through, we knew who we wanted, and Philip Seymour Hoffman came in. Mm-hmm. I wish I still had my notes for that. I'm sure I could find them somewhere, but we just saw everybody in that age range and auditioned up the wazoo. And it was great because I knew exactly what we were looking for. And, finding the oddball and who ended up being Andrew Lowry and then Randall Battenkoff. And, just the guys that we pulled together, I thought were just the quintessential casting for, 1960s/1980, whatever year it was.
You had to sort of breakfast club them together, the jock, the nerd,
totally.
the emo. So that's what you had to do for that.
Yeah,
right?
That's what we had to do for that. And I just thought it ended up being a great cast and auditioning these people. But in the first pass, we just couldn't find David. Everybody, we looked everywhere. We kept going and going and going and, just looking everywhere, but it just wasn't exactly what, Stanley and or Sherry was looking for. And then there was a transition because Sherry then I think became president of Paramount. Something happened so that Stanley left as director and they brought on Robert Mandel. And I remember getting a phone call, and they said, who else would you think about? And Pat McCorkle was also casting out of New York. In any case, I remember telling them, yes, Brendan Fraser came in on February 5th, 1990. So he came in on February 5th. So we had already seen him. It was Robert Mandel had a different vision. Robert Mandel had a different taste. We already knew that Matt Damon was going to be a part of it. We already knew that, I guess, Randall Battenkoff. I'm trying to think of the people that came from LA, Andrew Lowry, Amy Smart. But at the same time, it didn't mean, Pat and I were working together. So it was a total collaboration in a way. But I certainly knew, what these preppy kids were like.
Let's talk about your relationship with your the filmmakers who you've worked with over and over again, and Alexander Payne being one of them. You worked with him on Citizen Ruth and Election and about Schmidt. And with every project, his reputation got bigger and bigger. His popularity got bigger and bigger. His films got bigger and bigger. How do you build a relationship with filmmakers like that? Is it something that happens consciously, or there's a rapport and they keep asking you back? How do you grow like that?
Well, I mean, as far as Alexander is concerned, it was Kerry Woods who had been like Stan Kamen's assistant when I was David Rubin's assistant. So when David needed Stan, I would say, David Rubin for Stan Kamen, or vice versa. And Carrie would be at the phone. So we got to be friendly. And so when he became a producer, he, partnered up with Kathy Conrad. And so we all had lunch one day at the Lot. And they called me up and they said, would you like to meet with Alexander? And so Alexander and I met at Dupar's at the farmer's market. And, I remember just sitting on the sidewalk after like having a cup of coffee or something like that. And we were chatting away, and he was born February 10th. I was born February 11th. We just hit it off. I mean, I'm older than he is. Not by a lot, but at the same time enough, but whatever. So I worked with Alexander on that. It was terrific. And just this idea of just bringing in the faces that you wanted. And it was also different, back in that day, which was 20 some years ago. Yeah, definitely 20 some years ago, like 25 years ago. Probably even more than that.
Almost 30.
All right, let's not date ourselves, but yeah, I mean, it's fine. I mean, it's 30 years ago. We started working on that movie, and you didn't have to worry quite so much. I mean, you needed some name value, but it wasn't. But there's a difference now between like a $3 million movie, which I think 30 years ago is what that was, and a $3 million movie now. And I mean, first of all, the script was fantastic. And so but we were able to bring in those fabulous charactery faces. And I don't know, I just loved casting it. And so then when election came around, I remember getting the script from Alexander, and these are the days that it wasn't sent digitally. It was literally sent, by messenger on a bike. And I remember reading this script and laughing hysterically. And all I could think of as I was reading the script, I just thought, oh my God, this is Reese Witherspoon. And because she had come out in a movie called Man on the Moon when she was like 14, having nothing to do with Tracy Flick. But apart from the fact that I totally related to Tracy Flick, insofar as knowing, oh yeah, I wasn't really as bad as Tracy Flick, but I certainly had my ambitions to, A, go to an Ivy League school, and B, marry somebody, whatever, I had my ambitions. So I knew Tracy Flick, and I just thought, I think Reese Witherspoon would be perfect. And then she was in Pleasantville. So, we did the whole audition process, and Reese was getting a little more namey. So her agent said she will meet with Alexander. And so she and Alexander had a meeting in the conference room at the MTV offices in Santa Monica. Alexander, when she left, Alexander and I sat on another, sidewalk, stool, bench, whatever it was called, sidewalk. And he said, is she Tracy Flick? And I said, I have never in my life felt an actress was more Tracy Flick. I mean, there is nobody else, Alexander. She's it. She is it.
Well, it's interesting because then, and I still want to come back to Alexander and about Schmidt, but from there, you did work with Reese again for Walk the Line, which was directed by James Mangold, who you've also worked with multiple times. I just love that you have repeat customers, so to speak.
Oh, I love I mean, we loved being a repeat customer. And actually we haven't gotten to Scream yet, if we get to Scream, but in any case, my business partner now was my assistant on Scream 1. So, and she worked at Carrie and Kathy's office. So when Scream was coming along, okay, that's another story. But suffice to say, it's all kind of the family
intertwined.
Intertwined. And it's kind of who you know. And you obviously, I mean, I have fun when I cast a movie. I'm not really serious and deconstruct the performance via this, God, I think that she totally pops, or whatever word it is I use. I mean, it's nice to feel like there's a great atmosphere in the room. And so working with Alexander was always, Friday was culotte day. So we always had to wear culottes, as he said. I mean, just things that just made it fun, and we could just be honest with each other. And there was a real connection. And certainly, when Sarah was there during these days too. And we all just got together, got along, with Alexander really, really, really well. And it was just great. And he would ask us for the next one. And I'm going to say that the reason we don't do Alexander's movies now is because he uses the same, for the following couple of movies after that, he used his casting director was his location casting director, and the same person was the extras casting director and also the principal casting director. And that is not a job that Sarah and I would feel comfortable moving to Omaha for 3 months to do, or they could have afforded for us to do. So John Jackson, who lived, in those places, that's why he was doing them now. And as far as his new one, The Holdovers, which I'm dying to see. Can't wait to see it.
Me too. Me too.
I mean, Alexander still would call us, during Sideways and The Descendants, saying, "What do you think about, we had introduced him. I remember when we were doing about Schmidt to, oh my God, Thomas Hayden Church." And he loved Thomas Hayden Church. He didn't put him in one, but he ended up putting him in the other, because he would call still. I mean, I think that, we're friends. And so
Yes.
it totally works. It's a wonderful collaboration. We still call each other every year on our birthdays. He calls me first. I call him, whatever. So
question for About Schmidt, everyone loved the Brussels Griffon. I think like that breed went up a lot when that movie came out. Do you end up casting the type of dog as well, or you just work with the humans?
That would be an animal person who would, bring pictures saying this one is, no, we had nothing to do with the dog. We had nothing to do with the dog. But June Squibb. I mean, I think we hired a local person. She was fantastic. And it just, again, About Schmidt, June's, for an example, June Squibb, I was thrilled that she got that part because she wasn't like Eva Marie Saint or somebody that you necessarily heard of, and she just added such a reality to,
and she went on to star in Alexander's next film, I think.
I know. I mean, that's what he loves. He gets the essence of these actors as being artists as opposed to commodities. Exactly. And somebody gave me a mug once that said a casting director is an artist who paints with people. And I kind of like that, and I like to consider the creativity of it, because there was another situation. It wasn't a situation because Kathy Bates was fantastic, but there was another actress who literally was wearing her Mother Hubbards and her big old Playtex bra to audition for the role that Kathy Bates got. But Kathy Bates was offered the role, as a result of her name value. And, and she was fantastic. She was terrific. But there were some other choices too. If it hadn't worked out with Kathy Bates. So, there are a lot of really amazing talents that we have had the privilege to see.
Yeah. Moving on to somebody like James Mangold, who, you were talking about Kathy Conrad being producing Alexander's movies, but Kathy's also with, she's married to or with James Mangold. And so they were a couple at the time, and she produced all of his films. And so I can see the connections forming of why you would be brought in on some of his stuff. And as far as I know, you worked on Girl Interrupted, Walk the Line, and the Wolverine franchise with him, correct? Am I missing any?
Wolverine, Logan, Day and Night, Night and Day. I think we did like 7 or 8 movies with him. Honest to God, we worked with him so much, and it was amazing. It was really like a family.
But you've got like a Western, like 3:10 to Yuma, to like a major Marvel franchise like the Wolverine. And then you have a very music-filled project, Walk the Line. I mean, we all know that Oscars for everyone in that movie. Yeah. And then Girl Interrupted. It changed a lot of things for a lot of young women to be in that movie. And I don't even know where you want to start to talk about James and your relationship with him, and Girl Interrupted for sure.
That was like 97. And they put us in this fabulous, wonderful suite of offices at the Sony lot. And so every day it was just bringing in new girls that you'd heard of before. I remember Hilary Swank had just came in, but you could tell she was wearing a wig because she had just finished filming Boys Don't Cry. And so I knew she was wearing a wig, and she was terrific. I mean, she was obviously terrific. And I'm 99% sure that we brought her to Jim. But who knew that she was going to go on to, but there was no girl that you know of now who's in her 40s or 50s, i.e. Jennifer Aniston, who did not come in for that. And I remember, some people, a little far as the, because they hadn't been properly trained in the dialect of what it would be like to be a Tourette syndrome victim. Mm-hmm. And I think that in this day and age, we would need to have cast someone with Tourette syndrome or a disability. But 20 26 years ago, 20, 5 years ago, that wasn't necessarily the mandate.
Yeah.
It was really to find the best actor. And there were certain people who, were the burn victims, which I guess was the Elizabeth Moss. I just remember seeing her. But then, of course, the high point, I remember, as far as Dr. whatever his name is, the bad shrink that that Jeffrey Tambor got. John Ritter came in and read for that part, and I had seen him in Sling Blade, and I thought, you know what, John Ritter needs to come in for this because he was so known for all of his comedy. And I think one of my theories is that comedy actors can much more easily and are much more able to go into drama, i.e. Melissa McCarthy and Can You Ever Forgive Me?
Well, Tom Hanks. I mean, literally, Tom Hanks is the prime example. Yeah.
And so in any case, John Ritter came in, and I don't know what chord he must have touched somewhere when he was doing his screwed up shrink, Dr. whatever the hell his name was. And I almost burst into tears. It scared me. It really kind of scared me a little bit. Or it scared my, he was that good. But in the end, it was Jeffrey Tambor. I mean, Jeffrey Tambor did a great job, but he was offered the part, so I didn't know what he was going to do. And then as far as the nurse, the Whoopi Goldberg part, I remember there was one actress. I mean, this is kind of the, sometimes this happens in your job and sometimes it doesn't. There are moments you will never forget. Like when one actress who shall remain nameless, literally that scene where she's like, Lisa, and I was playing the Winona Ryder part, or whatever her name was. God, I can't believe it's been that long, but I'm old. In any case, this actress is shaking me, and I, one of the words that Winona Ryder, Lisa Beach, had to say was "fuck you," and then this actress said "fuck you too," and then she spat at me, and it hit me right in the forehead, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, and I was shocked, like she spat at me, and it landed on my forehead. Luckily, not my eyes. But in any case, so that's the kind of thing that all those auditions that would go through, and it was just so. I got to tell you. Shocking, but fabulous. It was just, I mean, if this is my job every day, bring it on, and
Was Angelina Jolie attached from the get-go, or was that somebody that you had to bring in?
Every single girl auditioned, every single one. I will never, ever forget Angelina Jolie's audition. I remember Brittany Murphy's audition because we used to bring her in all the time. So that was kind of a no-brainer anyway. And she would come in for us, and she was lovely, and we loved her mother. And, she just, we'd have lunch, it just, Sarah and I don't know. We loved Brittany, and we were really, really sad.
She was the sweetest thing. Yeah.
Just the sweetest thing. So she came in, and you just saw that vulnerability, and Daisy, just the chickens, and just broke your heart. She broke your heart. And now you kind of see where that came from, I mean, you just not knowing her personal background, not knowing her life, but you realize that well of something came from somewhere. So her audition obviously was, well, there you have it. But as far as Angelina Jolie is concerned, and I'm sure it's the last time she ever went in, to read for a role.
Yeah.
But
she won the Oscar, and that was it. Like that was different stratosphere after that. Yeah.
She was literally, I was here, and she was, I don't know, 4 feet away. So she starts, and it's the scene where, a speculum is a dick, is a speculum is a dick, is a this, is a that, Daisy, don't you, Daisy, don't you, and it just was astonishing. It was an astonishing audition, and an audition should never be considered your final performance. So if you see that audition, then you're thinking, whoa, holy shit. And so she left the room, and I turned to Jim, who was on my right, and I said, and there is your best supporting actress for 1998. And it was true. I mean, it was totally true.
Let's move on to The Wedding Crashers. Loved that movie. Bradley Cooper in a very supporting role, by the way. Tell me about casting him.
I mean, Bradley Cooper's audition, it just, he embodied sex so perfectly because he could do the comedy, but he could be a dick, but he's not a dick. He's a great guy. I mean, he's a really great guy. And so I love an actor who could do that, but I knew how versatile he was. He was a great actor in New York. And somebody, and it was kind of like when I thought about SAC, again, Wedding Crashers was pretty easy for me because it was that kind of East Coast, blah, blah thing.
Yeah.
But I remember certainly when we were doing Wedding Crashers and having our meeting with David Dobkin way up in the front, and we'd done a list, and he said, I want Christopher Walken, because, we'd done a list, and he goes, I love Christopher Walken. I said, let's go for Christopher Walken. So sometimes, you talk to a director and you say, why not shoot for the stars? We still have time. The movie's not soon until September. It's now like February or March, or, we have time. And so he liked it and he did it. And so, and Vincent and Owen were already attached. So that kind of brought a certain imprimatur to the, essence of comedy. And it was, I'm not going to say it was pretty easy to cast, but it sure was fun to cast. And and Rachel McAdams, yes, we had lists and I know we auditioned many girls for that role, but at the same time, I know that, it was a little tough because of Rachel's schedule, but we did offer it to Rachel and ultimately she took it, which was great. But I do remember, Isla Fisher's audition, again, one of those auditions I will never forget as long as I live.
Okay.
And I will never forget Jane Seymour's audition either. Actually, not Jane Seymour's, but another actress. Hold on one second. I'll go to Isla. Our situation was we had to be in a long conference room. So I was sitting at the end of the table. Sarah was running camera here, and David and Andrew and Peter were all to my left, and so the actress was in front. And so this particular scene we chose when we brought back Isla Fisher, who had auditioned, and then, let's bring in Isla, because we used to bring in Isla all the time. And so we brought her right in, and she did the scene where she was like, I love you, I love you, I love you. And she literally crawled all over me and kissed me everywhere. I didn't mind that because it was part of the hysteria of it. It was just like, she did exactly what she did when she was doing it to Vince Vaughn in the scene in the movie. And we were all just hysterical. David Dobkin, I'll never forget the laugh on his face. Sarah's camera shaking practically because she's laughing so hard. It was just this great, she went balls out. And that's what I love about an actor, when they're fearless, and she is fearless. And that's, so in answer to the question I didn't even ask, like, what is it a great audition? A fearless audition. And I can't give a specific example, but it's fearless. You just go for it.
Well, but that's what comedy should be. And you also did were the Millers with Jennifer Aniston. But your big discovery was Will Poulter.
I'll take credit for that one.
Yeah, tell me about that, because I love him, and he's a British actor. He was been acting since he was a kid in comedy, but he also plays a scary. He can do a good scary, but creepy villain too.
Oh, well, I had seen him in Son of Rambo, R-A-M-B-O-W,
Yeah.
and I thought he was so charming and so. I just loved him. So I said, Sarah, we're going to bring in this kid from Son of Rambo, and his name is Will Poulter, and he came in with this British accent, kind of tall and dorky and stuff like that. And we just thought, all right, well, he's British, like whatever. And so the minute he opened his mouth, action, the minute he opened his mouth, I'm Kenny. And he was totally Kenny. He became Kenny. And it was like Sarah and I, it was just, again, one of those moments where we just said, holy shit, let's call Rawson right now. And we called Rawson and we said, we think we found him. Because he was just so head and shoulders above. You could just tell what an extraordinary actor he was. Just extraordinary. Like so much depth, even in comedy. He just kind of totally embodied it without not one false note. So in any case, it was a kind of a fight with the studio because the studio wanted, more of a name. And there was a session in which there were two name people and Will Poulter, who were going to audition with Jason Sudeikis. So we spent an afternoon with Jason auditioning these, two guys and Will. And Jason said, well, there's just no question in my mind. And I think there was definitely, Jason, I'm sure, weighed in with the studio and said, he is clearly it. Rawson weighed in saying, here's clearly it. This is at a level where we don't get ourselves involved. There's only so far we can go.
Yeah.
But at least we had them behind us and we just knew. And so finally it was yes. And then we got Emma Roberts and it was like this great cast. And then I got to tell you, Tomer Sisley is the bad guy. I'd heard about him from France and I just said, what about Tomer Sisley? So we auditioned, put himself on tape and I thought he was hot. Hot, evil. That's what I meant. Hot.
Yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned Rachel McAdams for Wedding Crasher. You worked with her again on Red Eye, creepy horror movie starring Cillian Murphy before most people knew. And lo and behold, having the best career of his life this summer with Oppenheimer. This is another case of like you being at these seminal moments in these actors' careers, and then they go off and reached the apex. You did the Scream franchise, another
Right.
Kathy Conrad production, of course.
Right.
But that was like all those kids, all those were discovery. I mean, there was Courtney Cox from who, you know, had done Friends, and David Arquette had been around, but all
Right.
the others, it was like,
well, there was Drew. I mean, Drew, who initially was supposed to be Sydney, but then, you know, there was some scheduling conflict, or somebody came up with the idea. How about if she just is the, I think it was Wes. I think Wes said, you know, and to work with Wes Craven was just, I mean, he was so brilliant and he was so kind and so equitable, you know, whatever.
yeah,
He was one of the great men.
Yeah.
And it was such an honor to work with him. It really, really, really was. But all those auditions where we would bring in, you know, Skeet Ulrich, his audition was magnificent. And when Jamie Kennedy came in, well, there's Randy. I mean, you know, again, that was another one of those moments where he just totally embodied what we imagined the character was. Matthew Lillard came in, you know, and he trained at like Circle in the Square in their youth department, and you could just tell this kid was, I mean, up there. I mean, I'm going to equate their acting skills, but Will Poulter and Matthew Lillard gave me the same kind of, oh my God, they're just extraordinarily talented. You just know it when you see it. And that's what it is about. And it's very, again, it's very subjective. And I have no problem, you know, getting suggestions from people, but there are times when it's hard, when we have to step back and, you know, and accede to the wishes of the studio for marketing purposes or for whatever. I mean, it doesn't mean that the movies aren't going to be successful. They're just going to be more successful, perhaps, with these names that will put eyeballs in the theater.
Meghan Markle had a cameo in Horrible Bosses, and
she used to audition for us all the time. We would bring in Meghan at the drop of a hat. I'm not just saying that. I mean, we really did, and we really would.
What made her finally get through to the other side with you with Horrible Bosses?
Oh, I mean, there was no question that we were going to audition her for something in Horrible Bosses.
Yes.
Because she had comedy, and she just was lovely and charming. And I don't know. I mean, we probably brought in 20 girls for that part, I guess. I mean, you know, I don't really.
Such a tiny part, though, too.
I know, but she hadn't done anything. She hadn't really broken through. But you know, once she got Suits, she certainly broke through. Yeah, broke through big time. And we always loved, she was very professional. She was charming. She always had a smile on her face, and she was very good. She was very, very good.
Is it harder to discover new talent now? And here's the thing I always wonder. Does someone's Instagram or TikTok followers actually count for a studio or a director?
That would be the last thing I look at, because I have issues with, you know, these kind of poses and the glamour puss and the sexuality and the, you know, it's like, just be you know, because sometimes you're not that glamorous, and you shouldn't try to be glamorous, and I don't need to see you in a thong. So I have kind of issues. So that's the last thing I look at. I really do. For me, it's all about the talent. And but in so far as you know, is it harder or easier? In some ways it could be easier because we can see more people and feel that we really have covered the waterfront, but it's really harder because I really miss, you know, that kind of rapport. Hey, how are you doing? Great to see you. What's going on? How's the family? You know, you just don't get that anymore. And, you know, everybody's given up their offices basically, or, you know, many people have given up their offices. Certainly times are tough at this stage of the game, stage of the year, you know, with actors and writers. We haven't worked in a long time. I mean, you know, it's been a long enough time that I just don't know what the situation's going to be as far as our new rules vis-a-vis the SAG after a contract. And, you know, we would have to offer some kind of live or live Zoom or self-tape. The actor will get that choice. You know, live Zoom is totally fine. You know, there will just have to be a list of, you know, we could see 25 people in a live Zoom in the morning and then watch 80, you know, or 60 self-tapes in the afternoon. So we would definitely get a lot of people. And I mean, there are times when we put audition calls out for, depending on how intense or big or, you know, unique the role is, we could put out auditions for, we want to see 600 people for this. Not just like the old days when we, and like, for example, if we're looking for a kid, if we're looking for a 15-year-old to ride a horse, or a 15-year-old boy, or whatever it is, it's a whole new batch of people every time, every 2 or 3 years. So you need to see that many kids do open calls, do school searches. We did a movie called Wildflower that's on Hulu, and finding a neurodivergent lead actress to play Kiernan Shipka's mother. That involved a nationwide search in which we were calling, homes and schools and places where neurodivergent people resided, or were there programs for this, blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera. It's a big, and that's a part of the job I love. But at the same time, I really miss the human interaction a lot, because I'm, love being a people person, love just, but I don't know. I mean, I remember one time when we were doing Logan, somebody brought a samurai sword into the office, like to do, his audition. It's like, no, that's a big no. So there are times I don't miss it, but for the most part, I really miss. But I don't want to take the personal responsibility for somebody saying, I got COVID at Lisa Beach's office. And so I don't know when, and I think that studios are now not paying for office space anymore, and, as part of our expenses. So I'm not quite sure what the upshot's going to be come time we start. And by the time, say it ends in January of 2024, because it's not looking good for this year, it's not going to be automatic that the phone rings, although I pray it does. So there you have it.
When you look back at the auditions and the people that have walked in, are there any other wild stories akin to the samurai sword? Any other wild?
Well, I mean, I don't know how, I do have a problem with girls coming in and like having shorts so short that it's like, why wear them? Just why wear them? It's like sexifying themselves when they don't need to. And it's just, when you're doing an audition, you don't have to dress in a nurse's uniform to be a nurse, but you also just come in kind of, I want to say, and this is for feature casting, or for, or for dramatic television casting, or even for comedy casting. You don't have to wear a clown suit if you're playing a clown. We can extrapolate up to a point. But I do say, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to say wear underpants, because there was twice now that I just thought, you are not Sharon Stone, and I do not want to see that. So go home. So bad, just things.
So you think that's done on purpose?
I don't know, but it's just like, I just don't need, because, we're sitting across from each other.
Yes.
And it's
you don't need to see someone's hoochie.
Exactly. That's what you want to call it. Yeah, exactly. So, well, there's certain standards that you should just, be civil. And as far as advice to an actor, it's leave your ego at the other side of the door. And your ego, for me, and an actor's ego is what his downfall is. It's his devil on his shoulder. I want you to leave the devil on your shoulder at the other side of the door, and you don't walk in the office and say, I prepared it 2 ways, because that means that you want me to see you do it twice. That's your ego talking as an actor, as opposed to, just, and I'll say, any questions? No, it's all great. But make a strong choice about what you want to do. And I can always change it up. If I see the talent there, but it's just the wrong choice, I say, can you try it this way? I also want to see how directable you are. So, it's kind of involved, but fun, like a blast.
Yeah, I can see how there's a lot to be missed about the way it used to be. And, actors being there in person. I know that a lot of my actors, the actor friends that I have, really also miss being in person, because they miss the connection. And totally. In fact, I was talking to an actor the other day, and he said to me that he felt that self-tapes actually made him a worse actor for a while, because it also made him have to self-edit himself. And then he wasn't free. He lost that unawareness of just being, because then he'd have to look at that self-tape and edit it and
right and overthink it.
Yes, exactly. And he just felt he sort of like lost the essence. And he said that for a while he actually disliked acting, because he disliked what that process made him.
I can understand that. I mean, it's hard not getting feedback. And sometimes it's instant gratification. Obviously it's instant gratification if you are there in a live Zoom. But it's not instant gratification. Although when Sarah and I look at tapes, we both have no qualms about asking an actor, I'm so sorry, you did a great job. We want to send us to the director, but would you mind doing it again?
Yeah.
And with this direction. And, and an agent will call, has over the years, they call us and they say, would you mind if this actor called you? No, not at all. No problem. Before they put themselves on tape. So I feel like we're very collaborative and very open spirited, and we totally love our job.
Do you really look at 600 tapes for one role, or at least someone in your office?
I mean, yeah. I mean, we will watch at least one scene. If you are right for it, we will watch the second scene. If you are not right for it, we will not, and we only give 2 scenes that are probably about 2 pages just to get a sense. One scene is going to show one side of the character.
Yeah.
The other scene is going to show the other side of the character. And we will definitely take a look at least one scene for 600 people. And Sarah and I, just go through them. And the good news about what we do as far as features is concerned, there's enough of a lead time so that we don't have to, like episodic, we couldn't audition 600 people for one big giant guest starring role, but for a feature film, we have 10 to 12 weeks to do that. So there's, one, and usually because things are done for tax credits or tax reasons, it's been a long time since we shot a movie in LA, and that was Wildflower, because it was supposed to be shot in either Canada or Atlanta or somewhere, and Jean Smart, who, bless her heart, said, I want to be in this movie. I want to be in this movie. And so she said, but I can only do it in LA. So they moved the production to LA. Wow. And we made it work. And it was, it worked because there was some lead time.
You have given me so many amazing nuggets and so many great stories. So just as a parting, what do you think of today's star system?
It's a different, I think the advent of social media has really caused there is no mystery anymore.
Yeah.
And it's all about me all the time. It's like 24/7, me, and being paid for all this stuff. It's kind of, I don't know, is it bastardized, the idea of an iconic movie star? I mean, there were so many, I watched the Rock Hudson thing,
yes.
And like, it was so sad, but it was also beautiful. And I loved it. And I just thought, poor Rock Hudson, he couldn't come out, but at the same time, there was mystery and glamour to him, and Cary Grant, mystery and glamour, and there was no mystery and glamour to Danny Kaye, but whatever. But so many, like, think of all these iconic actresses. I mean, even like Jessica Lange and more modern actresses who you never knew about their personal life, except she was married to Sam Shepard or lived with Sam Shepard, as opposed to, look what I'm doing with my family and my kids, and here's my promotion and now that things are contractually obligated to go on to a thing saying, I can't tell you what it is, but boy, am I happy to be working with Steven Spielberg, or, all on your social media. So I think social media has killed the
movie star.
The movie star.
Yeah.
Social media killed the movie star.
Yep. Yeah. So exactly. Is the next verse going to be AI killed the movie star? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think they're going to be casting directors in 10 years. That's the problem with AI, because I think that, as somebody said, casting directors and actors are going the way of the landline, thanks to, AI. And I think that may be true, and it scares me. I mean, it scares me certainly for generations in front or behind me.
Yeah.
I'm at a point where, I want to make it another 10 years. I hope I'm alive in another 10 years, and I want to be casting every day of the next 10 years. But I think AI is, this is why the strike is so important, that they have parameters. And I know that there are different kinds of AI. There were some big giant articles, too technical for me, but there are different kinds of AI. And I hope that everybody at the Writers Guild, at the Screen Actors Guild, are addressing every single kind of AI, as opposed to the AMPTP saying AI, without defining the different types of AI that need to be defined, because this could always be used for that in the future in perpetuity, blah, blah, blah. I am no legal person, but suffice to say, it is worth fighting for. And it's tragic what's going on.
Well, I want to end on a happy note, because that is tragic. So on a happy note, tell me who you think today who do you love as actors? Who would you think is as much of a movie star as we can, considering social media killed the movie star? Or who do you think can just do anything, and that you just see as being so versatile and so wonderful that you would love to cast all the time and everything?
Right. Okay. Well, some are British, like Papa Essiedu. Love Papa Essiedu. I think he's fantastic. I love Lily Newmark. These are people you probably haven't even heard of, but these are the people I'm just like, oh my God, I just love Papa Essiedu. I love Lily Newmark, but I also love Jessica Chastain. I love Oscar Isaac. I mean, I love the stars of today, but again, we're not going back to the glamour part, but suffice to say, who would I cast in anything? mostly they're people that you haven't heard of yet, but who I would always think, oh, is there something for, or like Juno Temple and friggin' Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Juno Temple and Lily are kind of somewhat alike, but it's more the British actors, or Tomer Sisley. You know, he's a fantastic actor. I know We're the Millers was a long time ago, but when we need to be reminded, we go through our database of, like when we start a script, we will look at what the role is and what we think. And, Sarah and I loved going outside of the box. So there will be people that, oh my God, I haven't seen him in a while. Or, oh my God, I hear that she's fantastic in this new British series. So, and Sofia Vasikova, who was in World on Fire, which is, I think now, it might be airing on PBS, but if not, it's Sofia Wasikowska. She's a Polish actor. She's fantastic. She's fantastic. So sadly, people you don't know, but at the same time, burden my brain. And
well, I hope literally by saying their names here, then, we, a year or two from now, we see them and their names are just roll off the tongue like they would with Charlize Theron or somebody like that.
Exactly. There are so many fantastic actors out there. And that's why in some ways COVID was great, because it gave us the opportunity to totally watch as much television as possible, like Money Heist. Who's in the cast of Money Heist? Oh my God, I love all those guys. All those binges that you did. So,
yes.
I just did a binge in a Danish series and it's called DNA. And I think it's on something or other, whatever. It's just like, I love Matthew Good too. Matthew Good, one of my favorite. Love him.
I love, that's awesome. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
Thanks, Zoriana.
I know you are so busy. I mean, maybe the strike is what maybe you gave me time because you didn't have to audition 600 people today, but I really appreciate you.
I had a ball. I mean, I can't believe it's gone on this long, and then I'm not mortified that of anything I've said, except for that I don't remember some things, but then blame it on 65. Thanks, Zoriana.